All right. So in this review, I'm going to go over state abbreviator. So let's just quickly review the README, and then we'll fork it, clone it, install, and then do everything. Implement a couple different solutions. So let's continue experimenting with state, props, and inputs, and transforming arrays, scaffolding, use the app, create React app. All right. So first thing I'm going to do is fork this over to my personal GitHub. Looks like I've got state abbreviator 2. All right. So yep, go ahead.
I just had a quick question. So every time you start a React app, it loads all of this like base stuff, you know, like the start page. It has all the logos and all the CSS. So I spend 10 minutes every time just going through deleting the stuff that I don't need. Is there a way that I can do that once and save all that and then?
No,
it's just
not really.
Thought maybe I could maybe clone it up with everything like that and then fork it down and.
Yeah, you can do that. Like, so if you wanted to, you can create your own repo, like React scaffolding or React boilerplate with only the things you want, and just push that up, and then I guess like copy that down.
If it's the same files you're deleting every time, since they always live in the same place, you can probably script it pretty easily. Just pass in the directory to the script and it would remove everything.
Yep. All right, so I forked it over to my personal GitHub. I'm gonna get and clone it down. All right, so I'm in Charlie challenges. I'm gonna get clone state abbreviator 2. All right, I'm gonna go into state abbreviator 2 and open that up into a new VS Code window. Next, I'm gonna go ahead and list everything out. I'm going to npx create React app. I'm just going to close this initially. I'm going to just call it state abbreviator. Did I spell that right? Yep. All right. So if I open this up, it's going to go ahead and what does it say? Why? Oh man, what? Always. Node was it 16.14.2? All right. Let's try that one more time. So there's my state abbreviator, React app. And while it's installing, I'm going to have to move that state data directory in the root of this repo inside of the source directory. All right, cool. Well, again, this is going to take a little bit of time. Anybody have any questions about anything? Doesn't have to be related to React at this.
Have you heard of convex? It's pretty obscure.
Well, I think I've heard of the word before. I have no idea what it is.
I just read an article the other day of a company that's starting up that's trying to manage state with applications that are like peer-to-peer around the globe without it going through a database. And I guess that's going to be pretty efficient. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've not heard of that. Interesting. All right. So I'm going to go CD into state abbreviator. I'm going to do npm start just to get that up and running. It's going to automatically open up a new tab at localhost 3000. There we go. So I think it told me I need to move state data into the source directory. So right there. And I'm going to open up my app.js. I'm going to get rid of pretty much everything. All right. So what should I say? I'll keep the app CSS in there just because everything's kind of centered. So I'm just going to create an H1 tag. Again, this is JSX. Select state from drop down menu. All right, so I've got select state from drop down menu. Next thing I need to do is open up this index.js file. I'm just going to examine it. All right, what do we have? It says export default. So it's exporting an anonymous array. So it doesn't have a variable name. So it's an array of objects where there's a name file. So name, and then a key of alpha2, which is the alpha, the shorthand of the state abbreviator. All right, so in order to import that, I can say import, and I can call this whatever I want. I can call it states from, I'll just go to state data. Actually, I think that's all I need to do. I'll actually just call it state data. State data. Whoop. And if I'm looking down here, state data is defined but is never used. Assign array to a variable before exporting. Okay, so it looks like this is a warning. So the way this is, the syntax of this is just a warning. It's not going to break anything, but ideally it wants me to assign it to a variable and then export that variable, but this is fine for right now. All right. What questions do you have about me importing the state data?
Just that. So you called that an anonymous array? That's the first time I've heard that.
It's just because it doesn't have it's not explicitly defined as a variable name. I'm just exporting this. And then when I import it, I'm importing and I'm calling it state data. So this is how I would reference this data throughout this component.
Right.
So,
yeah, I understand that. I'd never heard of an anonymous array before. That.
I don't know if that's a technical term, but it's just an array that doesn't have a variable name attached to it when you're exporting it. But when you're importing it, you're assigning it a name.
Because it's anonymous, you can, whatever you name it when it comes in, that's when the name's assigned. So you can call it whatever. It doesn't have to correlate to the folder name. Okay.
Exactly. So I can call this whatever. And there we go. So I imported state data as whatever. And I don't have to go /index.js because anything that has the name index in it, essentially if a directory has a file with index, that is the default directory that it looks in. So if you just have state data as the directory, it will automatically default to look in for a file called index.js. But if I called this something else, I'd have to explicitly grab that specific file.
Okay, thank you for that. That was the first thing that threw me off in this challenge. It worked, but I didn't understand why it worked.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. So you'll see that a lot in React apps, is that they'll have like a directory with a bunch of files, like a bunch of file names, and then they'll have one file name with called index.js, and everything is exported into that index.js file. And then that file is exported into the overall app. So it's like everything's imported into index.js, and then that is exported. Then everything is exported out of index.js into the overall app. You'll see that a lot. So I'm importing whatever from state data, and then on line 6, I'm console logging whatever. So if I open up the console, you can see right here, I've got an array of 51 names, because I think it also includes District of Columbia. All right. So now, what does it say we have to do? Import state data to construct UI. The UI must include a select input / drop-down menu that contains a list of US states, a separate component that displays the abbreviation of that selected state once you select that state from the drop-down. All right. So I don't know how to do drop-downs. Menu, HTML, example. How to create a hoverable dropdown. Ooh, that's kind of cool. Maybe we can do something like that, but let's do the easy one first. Let's go drop down select. All right, here we go. All right, here is an example. I can go ahead and try it for myself. It looks like W3 Schools got an updated UI. So we've got choose a car with a select, and then the available options are right here. And the value, it looks like it has, each option has a value attribute. And we'll experiment with it, but this value attribute will equal the state abbreviation. So if I click that and click submit, cars equals Opal. Okay. So I'm just going to copy this over to my select dropdown, or to my component. I don't think I need any of this right now. I just want to see if this kind of works. All right. So we've got Volvo, Saab. Great. All right. Any questions on the select dropdown? Nope. All right. So next thing I want to do is just, I can go 2 routes. I can just make sure that like an on change works, or I can substitute these options with the options from the state. I'm actually going to rename this state data. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to populate these options with the values, the name, and values from the state data. So I'm just going to create a function that's going to return a bunch of option values. So I can say const display drop down options. And does anybody have a preference of whether I use a for loop, so like an array of options, or should I use the map?
Map was cleaner.
Map.
Okay. All right. So I'll go ahead and return. And map will only work when you're dealing with a specific an array of data. If you're iterating, say you just want to happen to create options for some arbitrary number, a for loop would work in that case. But since we already have an array of state data up here, we can go ahead and return state data dot map. And then I'm gonna go, whoop. What we have here is some data. I'm gonna grab the index as well. And I'm gonna return one of these options. And I'm just gonna do that for right now. All right. Display drop down options. I just want to see if I can get something to like a bunch of options of Volvo to display. All right, look, so it looks like functions are not valid as React children. Instead. All right, why not? Oh, I'm an idiot. I did not invoke this. There we go. So it looks like we have 51 Volvos. Great. So now we have data. So we can extract the data.name in here. I can't remember. Is it double or is it just single? Ooh. Single, right?
Single.
Data.name. So if I look there, there we go. We got a bunch of states. That's what I want. But now the value, yeah, so in view, it's double. I actually like React better than Vue so far. Data.alpha2. Okay, that works. And then I'm going to add a key on there. IDX +1. There we go. So cool. I'm not getting any errors in here. And now I've got a bunch of states. And now I can open up my React Dev Tools, go into components, click app. And it looks like I don't really have any props or data, which is fine. Questions about this? About how I'm doing any of this? All right. So I've got the select. Now I'll need to add an on change event handler on here. So anytime I select and change the drop down or the value from the drop down, I want to execute a function. So I'm going to create a function just called handle change. And I'm just going to console log changed. And then, so I literally just created a function just called handle change. And the only thing it's doing is console logging. So now on inside of the select, which is the parent component or parent div of these options, I'm going to have an on change event handler. And I'm going to execute this handle change function. So anytime I make a change, it should execute this handle change. So I'm going to go over to console. I'm going to do a hard refresh and click Georgia. And now you see it says changed. Maryland changed. New York changed. If I click New York again, it doesn't change. All right. So now I'm going to import use state from React because I'm going to need to utilize some state because I want to store this alpha state or the characters, the state abbreviation in state. So I'm going to do const selected state. What do I call the function that is going to change the selected state? State variable.
Set selected state.
So I'm going to call it set selected state. That's going to equal state. And the initial value, I'm just going to have it be an empty string. I'll have it be null or undefined. So under here, I'm going to add, so under the state, I'm going to add some conditional logic to display something. So inside of JSX, it allows you to write JavaScript, but it doesn't allow you to just write any JavaScript. You can't be like, if, selected state, like it won't allow you to do that specific. JavaScript. So if you want to do something more complicated, write it in a function and then just invoke that function within here. So in here, I can do like, I can either use a ternary operator. Does anybody remember what a ternary operator is?
Yeah. Or something with two options. So basically, if it's selected state, question mark, and then whatever you want it to do.
Yep. So if
and then
select,
colon.
yeah, so it's saying, hey, if selected state exists, so that means if it's a truthy value, display this H1 with the selected state value as an H1, or I can just have null or an empty string or something. So if I look at this, I refresh Arizona, so nothing's being displayed. But if I like change this to like CA as its initial value, and I refresh this, it shows up because it has a value. All right. All right. So this handle change should grab the value. So how do I grab this data alpha 2 from this option when I select it?
You pass in the event and grab the target and then the value.
Okay, I'm gonna just console log the event, EVT, shorthand for event. So if I do a hard refresh and click Connecticut, so we have an event that gets kicked off or that gets triggered. And you can see all the things are attached to this event when I change, like select a different option. So I've got this event as cancelable, bubbles. I don't even know what that is. Default prevented, false, event phase. So is default, I don't know, it is trusted, native at timestamp when it actually happened. Type, it's a change, React names an on change, target. So we can event.target. So let's just, I'm gonna event console.target. So I'm gonna do a hard refresh. So there's the selected. All right. But if I go back and look at that, just look at the event again. All right. there is a event dot value. So if I click whoop, Alabama, California, or whoop, my bad. See if that works. There we go. Yeah, sorry. So the event dot target value. So that's how I extract the value from the option that I targeted by selecting it. So when I click it, event dot targeted Minnesota. And that comes from that value attribute on the option. So once I have that, I can go ahead and
Quick
Yep.
question on where the event is generated. It's generated because we're plugging in that function handle change into the on change method or whatever you call that. And so that
Correct.
creates an event every time that on change is invoked, right?
Yep, because we added an on change event listener. So whenever that event listener gets invoked, it adds this event to the handle change to that
Okay.
function that we invoke.
Okay, just checking.
So now I'm going to do set selected state like so. And I can check to see what the selected state is by just doing selected. Well, it's going to work anyway, but I can always console log the selected state as well. And now everything should kind of work. So app 20 and this VM undefined, you don't have to worry about that, but I believe that is from the index.js in this strict mode. If I get rid of that. Yeah, so notice how that's gone now. So when I do California, CA shows up, California shows up on app.js line 20. Right here. And it shows up on the screen as well. So it looks like it's working so far. Let's go back down to this ternary operator. Since what I really want, like this is giving me two options, but I only really want one thing. If selected state is true, I just want it to display this. And then otherwise, I don't want it to display anything. So instead of, if you only want something to display when it's true and not display anything else, so have it be an empty div or empty, so nothing to show up, you can literally just get rid of that colon and just do selected state double and what the H1 tag. So if this is true, then display this. That's really all it means. So if it's false, it's not true. This won't show. So the double and. So if I refresh it, everything still works. All right. So just to recap what we did, we're using a select drop down. So the HTML element select with a bunch of option children. And to display all the options for the states, we created a display drop down options function, and that function returns and maps through the state data. And it grabs each state object and its index, and it just returns an option tag with the key value as the state abbreviator and actually display the state name. Then we added an on change event handler or event listener to the select tag, and we added a handle change function So we had to create that handle change function, and that handle change function takes in the event whenever we change, select a different state, takes in that event, and we extract the value from that option by event.target.value. And then we set that new value to our selected state value. And on line 28, if that selected state has a value, then it displays this H1 tag with the selected state displayed. Any questions? All right, let's go ahead and actually create a totally separate component that literally will just handle this part, the state. So what I'm going to do is create another directory called components. And I'm going to create a state abbreviation.js. So I created a state abbreviation component or file. So I'm going to split the screen. And I'm going to create a functional based component. And this functional based component is going to take in some props like so, and it's going to display something. So I'll just do H1 display state abbreviation. It's already exporting it. So on app.js, I'm going to go ahead and import state abbreviation. I think I already have a plugin that allows me to just say state abbreviation, and it should automatically import state abbreviation up here for me. So I don't have to do it myself. But I imported state abbreviation from components state abbreviation. And now down here, I am calling state abbreviation. I'm invoking it. So if I come over and refresh it, I haven't selected a state yet. So this is selected state is currently undefined. That's the default value. So it's not displaying the state abbreviation component yet. But when I select California, the state display state abbreviation component now displays. Questions on getting that state abbreviation component to show up? All right. So what I want to do is pass down this selected state down into the state abbreviation component as a prop, and then display that state abbreviation in the dynamically inside of the JSX. So in order to pass the selected state down as a property to the state abbreviation component, I can just say like state ABR equals, oh, not state, equals state selected state. And now in the props, I can just console log props to see what that looks like. And I'm going to delete line 22 just to get rid of that. And so now when I select it, display state abbreviation component shows up. And now you can see the props that are passed down inside of state abbreviation component, line 4, state abbreviation Colorado. I can also look inside of my components, inside of my dev tools, look at highlight state abbreviation component and see the props. We've got state abbrev and it's Colorado. So now I can display that by doing props dot state ABR. So I'm there and everything still works. Questions on passing state from a parent component down as a prop to a child component and displaying that?
Now that actually starts to make a little bit more sense now. I followed the data logic a little bit better, but I do have one question.
Yes.
Let's say in my component, I wanted to add a line that says the abbreviation for, and then I want a variable in there that has the state name. Where would I access that?
What you would have to do is somehow extract this data.name and store it. So value. Yeah, you would have to figure out how to store this into in another state variable, and then also pass that down.
Okay. Okay. So it's not storing the whole object in any of that. It's just storing the specific name, state name. Okay.
What you can do is in the value, this is probably what you do. You just pass that entire data object from the index. Oh, whoops. So you can pass that entire data value, which is that whole thing, down as a prop. So the value is data, but I would call this something else, selected state data. And then selected state data. And then you can say not state abbreviation, selected state data is, but this would be, what is it? Alpha 2 and name. Is for props dot selected state data. Why did that? That's how you do it. So you'd pass down that entire data object as the value. That should work. Oh, did not work. Let's see why not. What is props? Object. Interesting. So probably because this, you can't pass data down as an object, or this value right here doesn't work as an object. It has to be probably a number or a string. It can't be an entire. That's probably why that's not working. So you'd have to figure out another way.
Okay, so but you could create another variable using the use state, and then in that one, make it the state name. And
Yeah, I mean, you could do that. You just have to kind of figure out how to store that in state. All right. Yeah. All right. A couple more things. We're passing in props in here in the state abbreviation component, but once you start working in React, your props can be actually consist of a lot of data. So has anybody heard of destructuring before?
Yes.
that's basically what we did in the use state variable, right?
Pretty much, yes. So you're destructuring use state, but here you can destructure props. So you can extract only the values you want from props, equals like so. And now instead of doing props dot state abbreviation, I'm creating variables called state abbreviation here. So I'm destructuring props data and only extracting the keys I want or the data I want, and everything should still work. just a little Kansas. Yeah. That's just one thing you can do. And you can also destructure props directly within here, but it's generally not. People usually don't do that. One more thing. So here we're displaying a bunch of drop down select drop downs, but select drop downs are very popular. And to be perfectly candid, this is not a very good looking drop down. This is just the native browser drop down menu. So React has a lot of libraries, third party libraries that helps us create things a little easier. And I'm going to use a drop down select React. So there is literally a library that just makes creating drop down menus for React. And it's called React Select. And you can do, there's a bunch of different things you can do with it. So you can make it clearable, you can add multiple, you can select multiple items like so. Animated components. So there's like a bunch of stuff you can do. Purple, yellow, you can load data, etc. So I'm going to use this and create a select dropdown. So I'm just going to do getting started. So I can do npm install React Select, and it gives us how we can kind of go about creating that. So I'm going to kill my server, install React Select. And then here, so here's what it looks like. All I need to do is have my options look like, here's the value chocolate and a label key as chocolate. So a value and a label key. And then all I need to do is import select from React Select and execute or invoke the select component with an options attribute with these options in here. And then it should just kind of work. So in place of all of this, I can get rid of that, or I'll just comment it out. Like so. And I don't need this anymore. And I can say import select from React Select. And now to create a drop-down menu, sorry if you hear my dog barking, my wife just got home. I can say select. And now in my index.js where I have all the data, in place of this alpha 2, all I need to do is replace that with a label. And then here in that select, I can have the options equals selected or state data like so. And now if I go back to my React app, npm start, run that. Let's see this. You're going to see what this component looks like. I might add some styling to it just so it's, so there we go. It's a little bit better. Whoa. That looks crazy. Let's go ahead and add some styling to it. Just real quick, inline styling. There we go. It's a little bit better. So there we go. Arkansas, Colorado. But now it's like it's not still working because it's not adding the Colorado there. So what I'm going to do is add that on change attribute or the on change event listener to the select dropdown. Oh, it says cannot read property of undefined, so cannot read properties of undefined reading value. So you might have to make a little bit of edits. Let's go ahead and console log the event because this event might be a little bit different. So there we go. So options, name, Washington, label. So now I can just do event dot value. And that should work. There we go. And I don't know why that's totally highlighted. That's probably, whoa. Still not working. Oh, label.
Did you change the label?
Yeah. This should work now. There we go. Colorado, Connecticut, Washington. So there. So that's one example of using a third-party library. So it's literally 4 lines of code, really 3 lines of code, and it does all that same thing where we don't actually have to display and iterate through. We don't have to add a key or anything. The only thing we had to do was just kind of change our data a little bit by adding this label on here. All right. Any questions on that?
When you installed that, when you did the npm install for that select library or whatever you call it,
Yep.
is that only going to be in that app, like a virtual environment type?
Yeah,
thing?
so it got installed in my package.json file right here, where it's the React select. So it only exists within this application, this React app.
Cool.
All right. Anybody else?
So right now on your web app, like on the drop down, okay, yeah. Just a
This is the
second,
old
go
one.
ahead.
Yeah.
So it was the abbreviation, and when you clicked on the abbreviation, it also showed the abbreviation. Where did that change?
That came from this React select. This part. So yeah, this part, when I click on that, this where it shows that part. Is that your-
Well, I was thinking like, because you know how your drop down right now says the first one says Alabama and this one says AL instead of the name. It's the abbreviation.
Say that again. So
So that one has the full names of the states, and that one has the abbreviation.
okay, yeah. So it looks like the difference is the label. So the label is what is being displayed right there. So set up. Yeah. So here, this would need to be the label, the data. And the alpha 2 would need to be the name. So then in here, label and then name. There we go.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
So that's just my bad with the data, how it should have been. But I'll go back to the original, how it was. And I'll just comment out this before I push it. All right, any questions? Any questions on passing data from state in the parent component down as a property in a child component? All right.